Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
This is episode 300. Wow, I cannot believe we lined it up this way. No intention, totally just coincidence, literally, but it's fantastic. This is our 300th episode, and next week, the 24th, is the 300th anniversary of the United Grand Lodge of England. And what are you going to do for 300? Well, I hope you guys are going to come out to the 300 event that we've planned at the George Washington Masonic National Memorial. June 23rd, early registration. June 24th, all-day activities planned. We've got vendors, we've got special speakers, we've got food lined up, we've got beers lined up, guys. It's going to be amazing. We're going to be selling tickets pretty much all the way up to the event. So if you want a ticket, you want to party, you want to hang out with tons of other brothers from around the nation, then you're going to want to go ahead and go to themasonicroundtable.com/300 or right on our own website here at WCYpodcast.com. Just click the link for 300 at the top. I'd love to give a huge shout out to Brother Chris Tilley and the Missouri York Rite Bodies for having me out and come speak at their Lunch and Learn event last week. It was a wonderful time, great hospitality right out there in Jefferson City. It was huge. I was able to speak on the Word, which was a great talk that we did. And I got to drive out with my son and my good friend, Chris Becker of my own Lakes Chapter 121 Cryptic Masons. And also, he's also a past excellent high priest at Waukegan Royal Arch Masons, number 41. So we had a great time. But I also need to throw out a big thanks to Hesperia Lodge in Chicago for having me out. What a tremendous experience. What a great Masonic meeting. You know, I told the Worshipful Master Wayne Spooner there that this was probably ranked within the top 5 Masonic meetings I'd ever been to. There was recognition. They didn't just talk about sickness and distress. They talked about brothers' successes also, and they gave their own stories of why they became Masons. It was an uplifting meeting, and I just thought how fantastic it was. So to all the brothers of Hesperia Lodge, if you're listening to the program tonight, thanks so much for having me out. I was able to speak to that lodge about Masons connecting through technology, and it was a fun topic to do, and I really appreciate all of the fellowship and the hospitality of Hesperia Lodge as well. So thanks again, guys. Now, next week, of course, on the 21st, I'll be in Columbus, Ohio at York 563. You're going to want to check their website, york563.org. Click on their trestle board to see the details of where the event is happening. It may be happening at a place called the Rusty Nail or something along those lines. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I believe it starts at 6 o'clock. It might be a table lodge. I'm going to be presenting on Esoterics 101. So the aim of this presentation is to enlighten the lodge to the beginning parts of esoterics. What's great about this presentation is it essentially introduces those Masons who have never ever even heard the word esoteric or have heard it and are very uncomfortable by it. It gives them a chance to be introduced in a safe way that is educational, fun, and interesting. And for our esoteric-minded brethren, it is a way for them to also be able to broach the topic in the future. Hey, do you remember that presentation? Well, this is something I'm studying, or however you guys want to do it. But it is also very informative, even for the experienced esoteric Mason. We touch on a lot of things in this presentation that they will enjoy and learn from as well. So it's going to be a great time. I hope to see you out there as well. I believe Brother Mike Hambrecht will be there if you'd like to meet Mikey. Mikey, the intern from the Masonic Roundtable. We call him Hammy sometimes. Looking forward to that. And the very next day, Brother Mike and I are going to be driving from Columbus, Ohio, all the way to Alexandria, Virginia, to start the 300 event. So don't miss it. Again, themasonicroundtable.com/300. One more thanks I have to give to my good friend and brother, Scott Duvall of DC Craigir Lodge, number 81, about a 40-minute drive from my house. I was able to collaborate with Worshipful Brother Duvall and also a good friend of mine, Worshipful Brother Spencer Haman, and we were able to collaborate on the topic of traditional candidate preparation, dealing with the preparation room and the techniques used worldwide. So that was a fantastic time. We got to set up a live demo of it. It was very fun, informative, and we had just the greatest conversations after when we went to the restaurant. It was fantastic. A good friend and brother also was there, Ray Espiritu, who gave us some guided meditations, and fantastic evening, good brotherhood, great fellowship, great conversation. So huge thanks to also the brothers that came out to DC Krieger 81. All right, for our first piece this week, it's been a little bit. We haven't really read much that's come out of the Knight Templar magazine in a while, but this one comes out of the Knight Templar magazine, June 2017, number 6, and it's titled Freemasonry and Johanite Christianity by Sir Knight Jedediah French. The United Grand Lodge of England was formed June 24th, 1717. This, of course, is St. John's Day, when Freemasons celebrate the feast of St. John the Baptist. June 24th corresponds approximately to the summer solstice, which makes the longest day and shortest night of the year. The winter solstice, marking the shortest day and longest night of the year, corresponds approximately to December 27th, which happens to be the other St. John's Day, when Freemasons celebrate the feast of St. John the Evangelist. The Holy Saints John, as we refer to them, are said to be two eminent patrons of Freemasonry. Some early Masons and their lodges were referred to as Saints John Masons, Saints John's Men, and St. John's Lodges. The Baptist was even regarded as the patron of stonemasons in Europe during the Middle Ages, with guilds calling themselves the Fraternity of St. John the Baptist, and so forth. Of course, we all know the familiar ritual greeting and response. Whence came you? From a lodge of the Holy Saints John at Jerusalem. Interestingly, there is nothing definitive in the history of Freemasonry to account for the presence of the Johns, so it is puzzling that these two men should make so many appearances in Masonic ritual, especially during obligations. The only ritual explanation given for the Saints John is offered in the first degree lecture, where it is said that lodges at present time are dedicated to St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist, two eminent patrons of Freemasonry. Since their time there is, or should be, represented in every well-furnished lodge a certain point within a circle. The circle is supported by two perpendicular parallel lines representing St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist. It has been suggested that the two parallel lines representing the St. John mark the summer and midwinter solstices, but this is pure speculation. Yet they must be attached to the fraternity for a reason, for surely our Masonic forefathers were not prone to adopting symbolism arbitrarily. What's more, our Masonic forefathers did in fact incorporate symbols cryptically and auspiciously. Therefore, this article seeks an esoteric understanding of the two Saints John, drawing on esoteric lore, philosophy, and religious history. From my own study of Freemasonry and esoteric literature, I have become increasingly interested in researching a secret tradition of esoteric Christianity that has survived into the present within Freemasonry. This tradition has been referred to as both Johanine and Johanite Christianity, but I prefer to think of it as Temple Christianity. Whatever one chooses to call it, it is clear that the St. Johns play a crucial role in the secret transmission. Sacred history. The information presented in this article is based on sacred history and esoteric lore. Sacred history is that history of the world and of humanity that has been transmitted through the ages via the holy books and revelation. It does not base validity solely on dry bones facts, historical corroborations, or eyewitness accounts. Rather, it places tremendous value on a particular worldview and on a certain implied meaning. In this way, sacred history is bound up with a collective memory of mankind, not with material culture. Another word for this could be mythology. History, or ancient myths in general for that matter, are untrue. In the words of Karen Armstrong, quote, "Today the word myth is often used to describe something that is simply not true. A politician accused a peccadillo with say that it is a myth, that it never happened. When we hear of gods walking the earth, of dead men striding out of tombs, or of a sea miraculously parting to let favored people escape from their enemies, we dismiss these stories as incredible and demonstrably untrue. Since the 18th century, we have developed a scientific view of history. We are concerned above all with what actually happened, but in the pre-modern world, when people wrote about the past, they were more concerned with what an event had meant. A myth was an event which in some sense had happened once, but which also happened all the time. Because of our strictly chronological view of history, we have no word for such an occurrence. But mythology is an art form that points beyond history to what is timeless in human existence, helping us to get beyond the chaotic flux of random events and glimpse the core of reality." End quote. John the Baptist. John the Baptist is the child of the summer solstice. In early depictions, John is portrayed as a giant with Jesus as a small figure, a reference to a passage of Scripture. John was born 6 months apart from Jesus. His mother was elderly Elizabeth, and his father was the priest Zechariah. Parents did not expect another child because of their age, and so considered John a gift from God. The angel appeared heralding his birth to Zechariah in the temple before the altar of sacrifice. The angelic announcement of John's activity is identical to Jesus's. Quote, "And there appeared unto him an angel of the Lord standing on the right side of the altar of incense. And when Zechariah saw him, he was troubled, and fear fell upon him. But the angel said unto him, Fear not, Zechariah, for thy prayer is heard, and thy wife Elizabeth shall bear thee a son. And thou shalt call his name John, and thou shalt have joy and the gladness, and many shall rejoice at his birth." End quote. Adhering to the angel's message, John was dedicated to the strict Nazarene order. Over time, John developed himself in the order spiritually, while becoming increasingly aware of the poverty of spirit overcoming mankind, and that the end was near. Only the promise of the coming Messiah soothed his pain. He became a wanderer and a hermit, and most likely mixed with the Essenes, whose practice of baptism resembled his own. He stayed in the same cave that was once inhabited by the prophet Elijah 800 years earlier, and became deeply connected with him on a spiritual level. Around his 30th year, the state of humanity in Judea became too great, and he left and began his public preaching career. He preached at the Jordan River, crying out, quote, "Repent, the kingdom of heaven is at hand." End quote. Josephus tells us that many crowds came to hear his cries at the Jordan. Luke's account ends with John being imprisoned, and the last we hear of John in the Gospel of Luke is an offhand remark made by Herod referring to John's execution. However, the legacy of the baptizer lives on in the tradition of the Medians, a very early Gnostic group still active in Iran, Syria, and Jordan. Some scholars connect the Medians with the Nazarite order. They recognize several prophets, especially John the Baptist. Medians do not consider John to be the originator of their religion, but they view him as their greatest teacher, tracing their beliefs back to Adam. Medians believe that Jesus was a false Messiah who corrupted the teachings entrusted to him by John. Another important aspect of the Johannite Christian tradition, possibly preserved in Freemasonry, refers to a belief that was condemned as heresy by the Catholic Church. This belief is known as the adoptionism, and it is the idea that the Logos, or cosmic being of the Christ, the Son being, adopted or possessed the body of Jesus Christ during the baptism by John in the Jordan and occupied the body of Jesus of Nazareth for 3 years to fulfill its mission on earth, leaving the body at last moment before Jesus' death on the cross on Golgotha. Hence his cry of Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? According to biblical scholar Bart Ehrman, early manuscripts of Luke 3:22 that recount Jesus' baptism in the Jordan translate the line passage as, "You are my son, today I have begotten you." Ehrman argues that the church altered this translation to read, "Thou art my beloved son, in thee I am well pleased," in later manuscripts in order to counteract proponents of adoptionism. John the Evangelist. One of the most important books of the Bible for the esotericist is John's Gospel. Indeed, in the high degrees of many orders, this gospel is used for the obligation. Also, even higher degrees, touching on Rosicrucianism, utilize the Apocalypse of St. John. Why and who wrote these two books? For 2,000 years, it was believed that John, the brother of James the Apostle, son of Zebedee, wrote the books of John. However, in the 20th century, the Swiss theologian Johanine Christianity&nbsp, though an intensive comparative study of the four Gospels, discovered that Lazarus and John and the disciple whom the Lord loved were, in fact, the same person. The writer of the Gospel of John never names himself, but drops many hints as to it being written by the disciple whom Jesus loved. This is St. John the Evangelist, who wrote the fourth Gospel and who died as Lazarus, and was raised by Christ to receive a new status as an initiate and a new name, John. We could also call him Lazarus John. It was he who wrote the fourth Gospel at Ephesus at an advanced age, and who finally wrote the book of Revelation at Patmos. The fourth Gospel, which gives biographical details of Lazarus, is in part then an autobiography, written in the third person. Lazarus John had two sisters, Martha and Mary Magdalene. He was from a rich family in Jerusalem and later inherited his father's wealth. We know this from a report that lists the lands throughout Palestine which the family owned, even a health spa where Mary worked before she desired to follow the Christ. Lazarus was educated and active in public affairs. Luke tells us that he was the same age as Jesus and a half year younger than John the Baptist. He was not one of the 12, but had a special relationship with Christ. He was a disciple, the disciple whom the Lord loved, and he became a follower of Christ Jesus. He dwelt among the apostles and followers, even looked after them financially until he contracted an unknown disease and died. And after 3 days, the Christ restored him back to life. I would like to suggest that this was actually a process of initiation. There it reads, quote, "The sickness is not unto death," end quote, a veiled way of saying it was a ritual or a ceremonial death. This is not to suggest that Lazarus was not on the brink of death before he was raised. We must utilize a, quote, "both and," end quote, logic when it comes to sacred history. What does the word love mean here anyway? The Secret Book of Mark, a Gnostic manuscript found in the Palestine desert, describes an initiation of Lazarus as performed by Christ, which is sealed with a kiss. In some high degrees, for example, there is still a kiss given to the candidate by the master, usually on the forehead or the cheek, such as in certain Templar rites. This is not a romantic kiss, but something esoteric. The initiation of Lazarus occurred about 5 weeks before the Passion Week. John then accompanied Christ Jesus through all subsequent important events leading up to the end. Indeed, he is last one standing under the cross with Jesus' mother after the other apostles had fled. After the crucifixion, John helped support the remaining apostles, but he withdrew from public view, as both Romans and the Jews were suspicious of him. He looked after Mother Mary, for Christ gave him this task from the cross. With a rise in anti-Christian forces, he and Mary fled to Ephesus and lived there until she died. Some of this account is taken from Katharina Emmerich. However, the house was later identified and tourists now visit it regularly. Legend tells us that John helped his sister Mary and others escape France, and this tradition is commemorated in Chartres Cathedral. John grew extremely old in Ephesus, celebrating Mass daily and building the community in Christ. In his 90s, he was called the presbyter, the elder. One day he was preaching in Ephesus, and the Romans came and demanded that he offer sacrifices to Caesar's gods. When he refused, they arrested him and brought him to Rome, where they plunged him into a vat of boiling oil to break his will. But he survived and was expelled to Patmos, where he received the vision of the apocalypse. After Emperor Domitian was killed, there was peace in the empire for Christians for a time, and John returned to Ephesus and wrote the fourth gospel, dictating it from memory to his closest pupil. It is said that when he was ready to die, he informed his followers to prepare a coffin and climbed in of his own accord. His last words were simply, quote, "Little children, love one another," end quote. Then he relaxed into the coffin and died. This occurred on June 24th, the birthday of John the Baptist, with whom he remains closely associated. Johannine traditions and Freemasonry. What I am suggesting to you here is a secret tradition of Christianity passed on to John the Evangelist rather than James or Peter via Rome, as the Church contends. There is also the secret tradition surrounding St. John the Baptist. Thus, my argument is that these two secret traditions converge in Masonry, hence the two patron saints of Masonic ritual, and also the Whence came you from a lodge of the Holy Saint John, plural, at Jerusalem. After all, there is a legend that the followers of St. John the Evangelist came to Scotland in the 3rd century to escape the orthodox dogma of Rome. Also, in the Middle Ages, the monks in Fingall Abbey in Ireland claimed St. John the Evangelist was a Culdee, a kind of Scottish and Irish Christian monk. This may account for the distinct branch of Celtic Christianity. What's more interesting, perhaps, is this connection for the possible secreting of the esoteric Johannine Christian teachings within the Freemasonic initiatory systems, perhaps even as it is mixed with the Druids and stonemasons in the area. Even the main site of Celtic Culdee Christianity was located where, since 1311, there now exists what is known as the Cathedral of St. Andrew. Furthermore, the great Christian occultist Eliphas Levi described the secret religion of the Templars as being Johanism. Although they appeared outwardly Catholic, their mission was to rebuild the Temple of Solomon based on the vision of Ezekiel. He describes these St. John Christians as adopting certain Kabbalistic doctrines as they viewed the Gospels symbolically and allegorically. However, that is not to say that they did not also hold literal view of them as well. Again, this consists of both and logic. The figure of St. John was the key to unlocking the secrets of these allegories. For these beliefs and others, which included worshipping the head or the skull of St. John the Baptist, the Templars were accused of heresy and later executed. However, Albert Pike writes in Morals and Dogma that, quote, "The order lived under other names and was governed by unknown chiefs, revealing itself only to those who, in passing through a series of degrees, had proven themselves worthy to be entrusted with the dangerous secret." End quote. Needless to say, this idea persists in Masonry, in the Royal Order of Scotland, the York or American Rite, and also under the so-called L'arminius Charter in Mark Mason's Hall in London. Today there exists a lineage of Templar Johanism that began in France as the Johannite Church of Primitive Christians by French priest Bernard Raymond Fabre Palaprat in the early 19th century. This sect bases its teachings on Fabre Palaprat's claimed discovery of the Leviticon Gospels as well as the teachings of both the St. John. This tradition points to the Lamenius Charter as a continuation of the transmission of the Knights Templar lineage of Grand Masters into the present. This Johannite tradition also holds close ties with various Martinist lineages, and later there was included even the idea that the Baphomet worshipped by the Templars was in fact the head or skull of John the Baptist. In short, the secret tradition of St. John the Baptist believes that John was the true Messiah, not Jesus, a version of Christianity that was safeguarded within the Order of Knights Templar. The secret tradition of St. John the Evangelist, on the other hand, believes that Jesus initiated Lazarus. His name was changed to John, and it was he who was bestowed with the esoteric teachings of Christianity. His followers came to Scotland, where those teachings were paired with Druid and stonemason rites. Both of these Johannine traditions converge in a very interesting way in what I am calling Temple Christianity, and they have been preserved within Freemasonry up until the present, or at least that is one way to look at it. Sir Knight Jedediah French is a member of Sacramento Commandery No. 3 in California and can be contacted on Facebook under Jedediah French and at his Masonic blog, Sir Knight Jedediah French, Esoteric Freemasonry and the Western Mystery Tradition.
Hi, this is Adam Thayer, substitute host for the Whence podcast. 300 episodes of any show is an accomplishment, and we're all very proud of the work that we've done so far and are looking forward to what we can bring you in the future. Thank you to Brother Robert for bringing high-quality education every week and continuing to work tirelessly to put out these episodes for all of us. It has been my honor and pleasure to get to labor in the digital quarries with you, and I continue to be inspired by your stamina and fortitude. Thank you to our sponsors and show producers who make it possible for us to bring the podcast to you. If you haven't checked out any of our sponsors yet, you really ought to browse through the links on the website, as we only choose high-quality sponsors that will bring additional value to our listeners. Most importantly, thank you to all of our listeners. You are the reason we do what we do every week, and one of the biggest joys for me each week is in learning along with each of you. Thank you for continuing to listen, and we look forward to continuing to get to meet on the level with you every week.
Oh man, thank you, Brother Adam, for all of your tireless work on the show. I know it is difficult at times. I'll hit you up last minute to come up with an episode for us, but you always come through with flying colors, so thank you for all that you do. All right, I hope you enjoyed. That was a very interesting piece, and every so often there is a very kind of esoteric piece that is kind of peeks its head out in the Knight Templar magazine. I think it does have to do with a little bit of the Christian mysticism and how it is actually probably more accepted than most esoteric systems out there, and I think that just has to do with Christianity being a dominant religion in the United States. Changing gears now, I did want to go ahead and mention recently there were some of my lectures that were filmed. One of them was at Masonicon on up to Ezekiel Bates Lodge, and they went ahead and they put that up on archive.org. So that is essentially, I was able to take that and also upload it to our YouTube channel. That particular lecture was filmed by the local cable access, and it was really cool of them too. It's a wonderful production. The sound's great. They've utilized my slides and they kind of go back and forth, and it's really nice. So I have huge amounts of thanks that goes out to, of course, Cable Access and Ezekiel Bates Lodge, all the officers there, and those AV guys who made everything happen. So that was really cool. If you're interested in checking that out, again, it's on our YouTube channel. And I also have a filmed version of Finding Truth, which is a piece I do on Masonic writing, which talked about the Illinois Lodge of Research a few weeks back on our YouTube channel as well. Many thanks to Low 12 Productions and Greg Knott and Brother Todd Creason for putting all that together. Greg Knott, if you don't follow Greg Knott on Google Plus or on his YouTube channel, please do. He has all our video that day at the Illinois Lodge of Research, and I'm under the understanding that he is working on several more other projects, so keep that in mind. Next, we're going to go right into this week's Masonic Minute with illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison.
Faith, hope, and love. Abide these three, but the greatest of these is love. The messages and teachings of the Bible are wonderful and bring peace to our hearts when we read some like that one from 1 Corinthians. But the Bible offers a broad spectrum of life's lessons, some of which are unpleasant and even excruciating to read. We find such a lesson in the book of Judges' account of Jephthah. It's a narrative the Eastern Star has taken as part of its teachings in its effort to honor the women of the Bible. While the biblical account does not name Jephthah's daughter, the Eastern Star calls her Ada. We read in the biblical account, Jephthah the Gileadite is the son of a harlot. As such, his brothers and half-brothers want nothing to do with him and throw him out. Jephthah, known as a fierce fighter, lives in exile until the Ammonites attack Gilead. The town elders approach Jephthah, asking him to lead the fight. He agrees, only if afterward they will make him their leader. Agreement reached, Jephthah makes a vow to God. If I may win the fight, he says, I will sacrifice whatever first comes out of my house upon my return. He, of course, expected this to be one of the animals on his property. Jephthah leads the Gileadites into victory, and upon his return, a woman walks out of his house to greet him. To his horror, it is his own daughter. She is the first to come out of his house, and by his vow to God, he must sacrifice her. Jephthah rends his garments and tells her what he has done. His daughter says he has given his word to the Lord and must do as he promised, since the Lord has helped him avenge his enemies, the Ammonites. Resigned to this, his daughter asks him to let her go into the hills for 2 months and weep with her friends, since she will never be able to marry. Jephthah grants her request. Judges chapter 11, verses 39 and 40 tell us, after the 2 months, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed. She never married and remained a virgin. From this comes the Israelite tradition that each year the young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite. Certain commentaries, most notably that of 18th century minister and writer Matthew Henry, suggest Jephthah's daughter may merely have been banished or never allowed to marry, rather than suffer death at the hands of her father. That is certainly not what the Bible implies, and such speculation may, in fact, mitigate the impact of the lesson, one of the most powerful and profound accounts in the Bible, as well as the Masonic fraternity. Reminiscent of Abraham and Isaac, which had a much more palatable ending. what possible lesson can come out of this horrifying account? On reflection, there are several. First and foremost, a vow to God is sacred and must not be taken lightly or without serious thought. One can also argue the story teaches lessons of fidelity and loyalty to God, the innocence of a young girl, and perhaps most of all, courage. Courage on the part of Jephthah to follow through with his vow, and his daughter's courage in accepting it. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
Hi everybody, this is Bill Hostler. I'm a regular contributor for the Midnight Freemasons and a semi-occasional contributor for Whence Came You. Robert, I just want to congratulate you on your 300th episode. It's funny, it seems like it hasn't been that long ago that I did this for your 200th episode. I just can't say enough about your podcast and how much light it gives to the brethren from around the world, and for that matter, how much light that you help to give all of Freemasonry with everything you do. Congratulations, and I can't wait to record one of these for your 400th episode. Keep up the good work, brother, and thank you very much from all of us.
Wow. Thank you so much, Brother Bill. I cannot thank you enough for the kind words, and you're right. It does seem like just yesterday you were doing a voiceover for our 200th episode. It's just fantastic, and I cannot thank you enough for all that you do for the Midnight Freemasons and this show in particular. So thanks so very much. He talked about our 200th episode. That was a long time ago. We've always really tried very hard to bring you top quality audio when possible and to bring you quality Masonic education. And for the first 2 years, I was able to do that, and it became increasingly difficult to do that by myself. So we opened it up for people to be able to help this show, whether it's through a donation or pin sales or anything else. These people are the producers of the program, and we thank you, the producers of this program, people who bought the pin, people who help us out and shop through on it, people who have shopped at buybankersbest.com, people who have just direct donated to the show month after month. It's fantastic. And if you would like to help out, please go to WCYpodcast.com, click on support the show, or hover over it rather, and check out your options. It really means a lot, and I cannot thank you enough.
Congratulations, Brother Robert, on 300 fantastic episodes of Whence Came You from Brother Kenneth Lotman, past master of Lindale Lodge number 848 in Lindale, Texas.
Thanks so much, Brother Kent. You know, a lot of guys out there don't know, Ken's been supporting us for a long time, supporting by sharing the episodes and always talking with people and interacting with us on Masonic Roundtable, adding his 2 cents on our social media posts, and it's been great. A lot of people don't even know, Ken actually sent us a little something for my daughter when she was first born, and, it's just things like that that really make me feel like we're all a great big family, even more so than just the fraternity, but the WCY family. It's so awesome, and I love all you guys for all the little things. Thanks so much on the congrats, and again, let's see if we can get up to 400 episodes. Before we move on to our next piece for this week, I would like to go ahead and share that our brothers in Australia lost a close friend and a worshipful brother of theirs, Brother Carlos Zapata, and we recently put up a post on the Midnight Freemasons, which he wrote. It is a lengthy piece, but well worth the read, and really makes us think internally about the struggles of good and evil. Now, next week we will likely have a episode based on some of the things that happened in Alexandria, Virginia, but in addition, we will hopefully have a reading of that piece. My hope was to have that piece for this week, however, we recorded it in full and something happened to the audio, and it is much to my frustration. Something, again, went wrong with the audio, and there was clicks and pops. In fact, you may have heard it in a segment earlier in this episode, a little bit of, it was pretty annoying actually, but I do apologize. I couldn't remove that. So we have fixed the problem, and by next week we will have that as a reading, and I hope you all enjoy it. Continuing on with the theme of education, I wrote a piece a while back about what Masonic education was, and that was received pretty well. Brother Todd E. Creason, the founder of the Midnight Freemasons, then wrote a series of 3 pieces outlining what Masonic education is and how to use it and what it can do for you and your lodge. Now, not that he was hopping on the bandwagon, in fact, he had written this way prior to anything. Brother Stephen L. Harrison also produced a piece about Masonic education, and it was called The Masonic Education Paradox. And I said I would read it, and so here it is this week. The Masonic Education Paradox by Stephen L. Harrison, 33rd degree, FMLR. The Grand Lodge of Missouri has on occasion conducted surveys asking the brothers, among other things, what they want from Masonry. It probably won't shock you to discover the number 1 thing on the list is Masonic education. So hats off to the Grand Lodge of Missouri. It listened to the brothers, went to work, and came up with a Masonic education program. It works this way. On a regular basis, the Grand Lodge sends an information packet to each lodge secretary. Included within that packet is the document containing a piece on Freemasonry. Then, at a stated meeting, the secretary, lodge education officer, or any brother can read that piece and perhaps conduct a discussion afterward. Note that the program also has the added advantage that the lodges across the state are all working on the same subject simultaneously. There you go. Masonic education handed to you on a silver platter. What more could you ask for? I'll tell you exactly what. You could ask for the lodges to make use of it. I attend my share of lodge meetings. While quote-unquote reliable sources tell me there are some lodges that do, I have never sat in a lodge that uses the material. So let's recap. The number 1 thing brothers want is Masonic education. The Grand Lodge provides it, and generalizing, the brothers don't use it. It's a bit of a paradox, isn't it? Maybe the next survey should ask, what do you really want? So I have a suggestion. If you want Masonic education more than anything, appoint yourself your own personal education officer. Read, research, write, learn everything you can, but don't stop there. Make a commitment to the lodge. It doesn't take much. Maybe start by reading an article from the Midnight Freemasons blog, or maybe an excerpt from the Midnight founder Todd E. Creason's famous American Freemasons book. Modesty prevents me from mentioning that you could read something from one of my books. Likely as not, just a few minutes on the subject will spark a discussion. If my experience is any indication, your brothers will thank you for doing it. Try it. Just a few minutes of Masonic education can turn a mundane meeting into a memorable meeting. If that works, take it a step further. Ask your brothers to do the same. Maybe think about upping your game and turning it into a presentation. Take it to other lodges. Ask those brothers to do the same. In other words, in the words of that great litterbug, Arlo Guthrie, let's start a movement. Before you know it, we might be swimming in Masonic education. Stephen L. Harrison.
Hey everybody, Brother Alex Powers here from the Historical Light YouTube show and podcast, and I'm here to wish Brother RJ a most sincere congratulations on 300 episodes. How amazing is that? Now, it's amazing, but it's also no surprise. Brother RJ, you've got an epic thing going here, and you fully deserve every bit of success that you see from it. I'm personally a longtime fan of the show, and having a show myself, I know firsthand the time and dedication that it takes to keep something like this going. So everybody, please understand that this is not RJ's career. This is his passion. For 300 episodes now, Brother RJ has invested valuable time into the show as a benefit to us, the listeners, as a means to spread farther light to all of us, the listeners. And why? Because he's just an amazing brother. RJ's been a mentor to me, and I'm thrilled that, I finally got to meet him up at Masonicon. And since then, we've become pretty good friends. So, RJ, congratulations on hitting 300. But beyond that, thank you. I want to thank you for all that you've done for me and for the craft as a whole. And brother, here's the 300 more.
Wow. What can I say? Brother Alex Powers has a fantastic way with words. Talk about humbling. Alex, if you guys have not listened to Alex Powers' podcast, Historical Light, you guys are missing out. He has taken the reins of something that so many brothers connect to, our Masonic history, and he's bringing it to us on a regular basis, and it is a phenomenal program. And I can't thank you enough, Alex. We did meet at Masonicon, and we hung out, and we had some libations, and we had some deep discussions, and I can honestly say that I'm better because of what we were able to talk about, and that's just the brotherhood of Freemasonry. And likewise, this goes two ways. You, sir, are also an inspiration to me, coming out with a show. This is what it's all about. Some of us spread our knowledge in local lodges. Some of us spread that knowledge on a district or a state level, and others, we are able to, because, blessed by deity, have a talent to be able to do this and bring it to the masses and have that dedication to keep doing it. And I'll tell you where that dedication comes from. It comes from these positive messages and meeting the brothers out there all the time. And this goes for every brother out there. Jason, John, Nick Johnson, Juan Sepulveda, Greg Kaminsky, Fraudero, Alex Powers, Eric Diamond, Bill Hosler, Adam Thayer, Todd Creason, Greg Knott, Jimmy Fry, Michael Shirley, Steve Harrison, Doc Gentry, Wayne Greenlee, Brian Shimian, Aaron Gardner, Scott Duvall. There's guys in my district even. Chris Hodap, Andre Bellevaux, Frank Scrobot, guys like Joe Wages, Jared Stanley, who also has a show on YouTube you gotta check out. Brother Rob Lewis, Paul Chamberlain, Brian Mara, Mike Hambrick, Jeff James, Tom Acousti, Brian Simmons, Brian Evichin, Julian Rojas, Tony Sylvia, Chad Bromley, Ryan Flynn, Jason E. Marshall, Robert Davis, Bradley Baker. These are guys I converse with all the time, whether that's weekly, monthly, or even daily for some of them. These are people who support this show, my mind and my spirit every day with how inspiring they are. So, Alex, thanks again for the congrats. I know I named a lot of guys, and you guys are probably all thinking blah, 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 but, I really would be remiss if I didn't at least say their names on this show. There's so many guys, and if I didn't call your name, and you've talked to me, I meant to say your name. It just didn't come to me in the spur of the moment here. But again, thank you all so very much, and I'll see you all in Alexandria, Virginia next weekend. Until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.